SMU head coach Rhett Lashley just called out ESPN for their SEC favoritism.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I mean, who needs a conference commissioner with the way Lashley is speaking out? Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs, former NC State defensive lineman and co-host of Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno, host of Locked On Canes. And on this loaded episode, we've got starting quarterbacks named at Syracuse and at Cal. And I guess you could say one of those was a little bit more surprising than the other, but both were pretty good competitions all the way through. The Big Ten has proposed an idea of 24 to 28 teams in the college football playoff, and there's backlash coming from that. But Kenton, I wanted to start with this, not only the actual story itself, but the reaction from a prominent ACC head coach. So can you explain to me, KG, how this happened? So the ESPN FPI rankings were first released in June. They were updated earlier this week. And with the update, Miami drops from number 9 to number 17. Clemson dropped from number 11 to number 16. And teams that move up include Tennessee moves ahead of them 2 spots. Ole Miss moves up 3 spots. South Carolina moves up 4 spots. LSU, Florida moves up 5 spots, USC and Michigan. But first of all, Kenton, I don't understand how does the FPI ranking data change so much between June and August with 0 new games played?
Donno, I'll take it a step further. How does it change at all?
Right.
I'm not joking. I literally want to know what data points came into play for these teams that were not there previously that they said, oh man, these teams are going to be much better than we thought. Was Tennessee's quarterback, what is it, Aguilar? Was he that good in what they saw in terms of his play last year to where they were like, oh, we know this is a surefire thing. Tennessee is going to be exponentially better? I highly doubt that. So I'm sitting here saying to myself, how did this happen? And how is it just so ironic that, or how is it so what's the word I'm looking for? How is it such a big coincidence that every single ACC school moves back? Every single ACC school in this group moves back. That's very interesting. I find that very interesting. I go back to the quote by I believe it was Doctor Who, and it was Benedict Cumberbatch. What do we say of coincidence? The universe is rarely so lazy. It is rarely so lazy to have all of the schools from one particular conference, all of them, get moved back from where they currently stood without any new data points introduced as well.
Well, and here is what happens. At first, I guess let's define, just so people know, what ESPN FPI is. You know, the ranking number from FPI is not the one you see next to your team's name on Saturdays. In the early part of the season, that would be the AP rankings voted on by the media. In the later part of the season, that's the college football playoff ranking voted on by that committee. What the FPI is defined as is a predictive rating system developed by ESPN that measures the strength of teams and projects game and season outcomes in American football. It's used in both college football and the NFL, though the models have slight differences. So it's a statistical-based computer-generated model. But here's why it's important, okay? Why this is important is ESPN, of course, is so influential in shaping opinions on college football. So yeah, once you get to the polls that really count, the AP, the College Football Playoff Committee, ESPN is part of the metric that influences these people because, yeah, as human beings, we can't physically watch every single game played by every single team every single weekend in college football. So metrics like this contribute to the conversations. Now, ESPN, of course, is the primary rights holder for both the SEC and the ACC, yet they treat the ACC like garbage by and large. The SEC is their real cash cow. So what ends up happening, Kenton, when we're in this echo chamber, where the SEC bubble gets inflated so much, how this influences the final rankings and ultimately the college football playoff field is that when every SEC team is ranked higher, the old "it just means more" slogan, when every SEC team is ranked higher, every game an SEC team wins against a conference opponent is inflated when you win. Oh, look at that great team they just beat. And on the flip side, every game they lose, like when, Alabama loses to Oklahoma or loses to Vanderbilt, hey, that's a quality loss because it's the SEC. It just means more. That's what happens when every team in your conference gets inflated this much. And then, of course, for the ACC, when all of the teams get deflated by metrics like this, every loss you have is a terrible, tragic loss. That's how this shapes the opinions of the college football world.
Not only that, let's get into the soft impacts of it. We're looking at a situation where we're talking about conference realignment and who's going where and all that. Where do you think people would get the gall and the audacity to say that Miami would beg to be in the Big Ten? Where do you think people would get that idea from? The idea that your conference is so weak, so incompetent, so inept, so devoid of talent and winners, that when you look at the final product and result before the season starts, you have no teams ranked in the top 5. You have one team ranked in the top 15. You have 2 teams ranked in the top 25 in terms of FPI. And the biggest thing that I want to stress one last time, because I don't think people understand how big this is. Imagine, Donno, if I said we're going to look at the Donno family futures, and we're going to do that based on a statistical analysis that we run 1,000 simulations of the Donno family life. And then, things look pretty good for you. Things look all right. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, with no new data points, I run a new 1,000, and all of a sudden, everybody's life expectancy goes down. Everybody's earning potential goes down. Everything takes a nosedive with no new data points put in. You too would sit there and say, wait a minute, all of us were supposed to live to 80 and make $300,000 a year. Why are we all passing away at 45 of heart attacks now? What's going on?
Yeah.
It's so frustrating, because then people are going to call you a black helicopter person if you're pointing out what is obviously somebody putting their thumb on the scale. What is obviously no new data points introduced. I wouldn't even be mad if this was after week 0 or week 1. And they said, you know what?
Yes.
ACC teams look so bad, we're going to put them down, even if we went undefeated. Don't care. What I do care about is the fact that no new data points were introduced, and all of a sudden everybody takes a nosedive. That's illogical. It's nonsensical, and it is very clear that there is some muck in the game.
Yeah. So here's how things stand right now. Texas at number 1, UGA, Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State round out the top 5. Notre Dame, Oregon, Tennessee. These are the big movers here from the SEC. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, South Carolina, LSU, Florida, USC, Michigan. Then you've got Clemson and Miami. But funny thing about this, look at this reply. This is the actual X account of SMU head coach Rhett Lashley, who says, because the whole thing is rigged. And I got to give Rhett credit, right? He stood up for the ACC and pointed out during ACC media days, hey, you guys call our conference top heavy? Look at the SEC in the past. How many decades? Only 6 teams have won an SEC championship going back to what? The 1940s? And yet you got these SEC narratives. And now he's standing up for the ACC again. The whole thing is rigged. So I appreciate Rhett for standing up. And I hope people are listening, Kenton. And I hope the ACC commissioner, Jim Phillips, is listening, because you're letting Rhett Lashley go out there and do your job for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is what I mean by Jim Phillips is a very cerebral, calculated guy. But sometimes you need fiery. You need passion. You need that quote unquote demon that's going to go after people. It is in almost every sphere of life right now where we're seeing it's 2025. We can no longer exist in a world where it's like when they go low, we go high. We don't exist in that world anymore. We don't exist in that world anymore. You know what world we exist in? I'm going to quote a young man by the name of Kendrick Duckworth. If you take it there, I'm taking it further. That's something you don't want to do. That's the world we live in now. Yeah. That is the world that we live in, and that's where Commissioner Phillips needs to be. When people are disrespecting the ACC, your job is not what's in the best interest of all of college football. It's what's in the best interest of the ACC. Rhett Lashley doesn't look around and say, what's in the best interest of all the Texas schools? No, he says, what's best for SMU? That's what I'm going to push. That's what I'm going to do, and we need that from Jim Phillips.
Coming up next, the Big Ten has such a crazy idea for the college football playoff that they've actually pissed off some of the execs out there. You want to keep it locked. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Football is almost back. Well, it is back because we do have NFL preseason games right now. And this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up. College football is not far behind. Whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get into the game. Guys, you're excited to make your picks on players like Joe Burrow, Saquon Barkley, Josh Allen. Folks, PrizePicks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Guys, I've been using PrizePicks since 2021, and they've got me as a lifer. The flex play option is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses and gets injured, you can still double your money. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. Folks, we're also brought to you by DripDrop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or just staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where DripDrop comes in. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy. That's why I've been loving DripDrop. DripDrop is doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. And folks, you're going to feel the difference. And it also helps that it tastes great. My go-to flavor is the cherry limeade. It's a game changer after a workout or on one of those extra busy days. Right now, folks, DripDrop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to DripDrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out our other shows. Kenton Gibbs and Grayson Boone cover everything NC State on Locked On Wolfpack. I cover all things Miami on Locked On Canes. So we started to hear, Kenton, earlier this week about this Big Ten proposal. And I remember a couple months ago, Greg Sankey of the SEC was like, hey, I would love it if some other commissioners had some ideas for the college football playoff. Well, Tony Petitti of the Big Ten has an idea that leaked this week of, we're at 12 right now in the CFP. We've talked about going up to 16 teams. Petitti wants to go up between 24 to 28 teams for a college football playoff, which is huge. You're talking about 5 rounds of playoff. You're also talking about eliminating conference championship games because it'd just be too much and they would no longer serve a purpose. And if you think this is a terrible idea, you're not alone. But there's also some upset conference executives and CFP executives because apparently, according to CBS Sports, news of the Big Ten's internal socialization of an early blueprint to expand the CFP came to light on Saturday before many of the commissioners in the other 9 FBS conferences were informed personally by Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti. Leaks around CFP formats over the last year are nothing new, but the timing with a December 1st deadline looming for a new agreement intensified frustration. One upset executive told CBS Sports, quote, "We sound like immature children throwing garbage against the wall. It's frustrating that these topics can't be discussed behind the scenes and brought out to the public once they've been vetted," an SEC administrator said. So, Kenton, not only is it a terrible idea, but they're they're really upset that, hey, sometimes we have terrible ideas. They don't always need to leak like this one did.
Good. I'm glad the Big Ten is finally putting their thumb on the scale with some ideas as well. Don't get me wrong. This is a terrible idea. I hold no bones about that. This is absolutely awful. But I don't know why a lot of these administrators are complaining. Have you heard your head coaches? A head coach of an 8-4 school in Eli Drinkwitz, who won 8 games last year, said, when asked what he needs to do to get to the playoffs, said, we need to expand it. Well, here's your expansion. We had to double it. It's going to be 2 size, the size of what it used to be. I don't see what the problem is. Now we won't be debating and litigating and arguing, well, does this 4-loss team deserve to get in or does this 4-loss team deserve to get in? Because now they're all going to get in. If you're from that type of way, you're all going to get in, which I think is a little embarrassing. I think that these teams should say, hey, enough. The playoffs should be reserved for teams with, number one, an actual shot at winning a national championship. And number two, even beyond that, at a certain point, just win your damn games. Like, that's the biggest thing for me. I'm sorry. I haven't seen, and maybe I'm incorrect here, Donald, but have you seen any one-loss teams, any one-loss FBS, one-loss Power 4 teams be denied the playoff since it expanded to 12? No, okay. I don't think it'll happen. Even with the current format, I don't think it would ever happen. So, it's very interesting to see this. I think it's a horrible idea as well, but I think it's very interesting how it's like, why weren't these things discussed behind closed doors? Why would they be discussed behind closed doors, friends? And what else is being disclosed behind closed doors only? I don't know, Donald. Maybe it's some collusory activity going on, being discussed behind closed doors, because we've seen it from the NFL already. And I'm wondering if the colleges are and the conferences are conducting their own form of collusion against their athletes. But that's just speculation, Donald. That's completely speculation.
Josh Pate, who's now with On3 Sports, had an interesting theory on why this idea leaked. I love a good conspiracy, so I'm willing to hear him out on this one. His theory was, the idea that the Big Ten really likes is the 16-team playoff with the auto bids for, 4 auto bids for the Big Ten, 4 for the SEC, and 2 each for the ACC and Big 12. And of course, we don't like that because we feel the ACC is being underserved with that amount of auto bids, right? Where a lot of the other commissioners and coaches say, we don't need this many auto bids. Just let the top 12 ranked teams get in. You can do the 5+11 formula is what most of the coaches are in favor of. That you do the 5 auto bids for the top 5 conference champions, and then you have like the 11 quote unquote at-large bids. That's what most are in favor. But the Big Ten really wants to protect their conference with the 4 auto bids, right? This new idea would include, I think, 6 auto bids each for the Big Ten and for the SEC. So the theory from Josh Pate was, the Big Ten really wants to have 16 teams with the 4 auto bids for their conference. There's not enough support for that idea, so they proposed a crazy idea to make their other unpopular idea seem less crazy. That, hey, we have a better chance of getting our way with the 16-team playoff with the 4 auto bids. We have a better chance of getting that if we propose another idea that people really hate that makes our original idea more palatable. I thought that was, I don't know if that's actually what's going on, but when you talk about things happening behind the scenes, Kenton, isn't that kind of how negotiations work? That if you want to pass through a somewhat unpopular idea, you give a less popular alternative that makes the original idea seem more tolerable.
Yeah, as a recruiter, I've seen this a million times. Whenever I'm going in to offer somebody, we tell them the pay range. We ask them if they're comfortable with the pay range before we even start the interview process. And then all of a sudden, at the end, when they get the offer, they say, well, I need a little bit above the top of band. Is it at all possible for us to kind of work something out where we give something, you give something to kind of make this thing work out? It's a tale as old as time, Donald. It's a tale as old as time. When you were a teenager and you thought you were being smart the first time you did this, talking to your parents, well, hey, a lot of other kids are staying out till 3, or their parents don't even give them curfews. So you propose this ridiculous thing, right? Like a 17-year-old just not coming home is normal. And we're like, Why can't I stay out till 2 when your curfew is midnight and you're aiming for 1? You're angling for 1. That's your sweet spot, but you come in with the other kids don't have 1. Why can't I get 2? And you expect them to talk you down to 1. But your ultimate goal is to get beyond that 11:30 or 11 curfew.
So, and just so people know, by the way, with this 24 to 2018 proposal, multiple spots, CBS, Yahoo have emphasized that this is in the infancy. Like this proposal, this is not what we can necessarily expect to happen, but it's just one of the ideas that's been floated out there. So, like at the end of the day, Kenton, and they have until before 2026 to decide what the next format is going to be, because this is like the last year of the guaranteed 12 team, and then we're probably going to add more to it. I think we're probably going to end up with 16 for the next version of it. Do you feel that way? And do you think we're going to get all the auto bids, or will we get the 5+11 formula?
The next version will be 16 plus the auto bids, because the Big 12 and the ACC, I don't believe, have the spines, have the fortitude, have the Rhett Lashleys for it.
Yeah, we need more Lashleys.
they just don't, without Lashleys, you would not give the SEC and the Big Ten their Lashings, because that is a guy that is going to come out of the gate swinging regardless. And I don't think that we have that type of commissioner in Jim Phillips. Again, to me, it is very simply, we need to be calling out the bias, the foolishness, the nonsense at every single turn. To me, every coach that's not screaming their head up, I understand that y'all are in camp, but right now you're doing something that is just as important as getting your players crisp and sharp for the season. Because guess what? If you coach your team up to be the best team that they could possibly be, to squeeze every single drop and every single win out of their team. Let's say, for example, a Boston College, okay? What do you think their absolute ceiling is? 9 wins, 8 wins this season?
I'd say 8.
Okay, 8 wins. Let's say Bill O'Brien squeezes every win out of those 8 possible. Does he end up in a really high-quality bowl game if the ACC is not seen as a high-quality conference?
No, they end up at the Fenway Bowl or something like that.
Now you're eating hot dogs as a part of your bowl experience. Like that's part of your bowl excursions and whatnot, as opposed to ending up in one of the really nice ones because you made it clear, hey, there's something wrong with the FPI. Hey, why does the FPI all of a sudden move all these different metrics and all of these different where people are based on nothing new, based on no information that changed? You knew that those guys were on the roster when you first made this here calculation that comes up with these rankings. Who did Clemson lose that made them get 11 teams worse? Who walked away from the program that they said, oh my God, I can understand if one of these 3 players was gone for Clemson? TJ Parker, Peter Woods, K. Klubnik. I get it. I'd be like, hey, that he had a little tweak in his knee. He's not going to be back this season. I get it. I understand it. Nobody's left. Nobody's going. So how all of these teams magically leapfrogged over them right before the season starts too. What a weird coincidence. Right before the season starts. You've got to look at this and say somebody is very clearly putting their thumb on the scale and they're not even doing a good job at hiding it. And if you're an ACC media member, if you're an ACC coach and you're not calling this out, players, I get it. Y'all are young. You're 18 to 24. You're out there doing your thing on the field. Coaches, guys that got to do speaking before the press and all that stuff. SIDs not telling your coaches about this and saying, hey, we need to get out in front of this and make our conference look good. Commissioner's office not saying anything about this. It's embarrassing.
Well, okay, here's some new data. Although if the FPI hears about this, they're just going to move these teams down. Cal and Syracuse have announced their starting quarterbacks for the upcoming season. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the person didn't answer the phone, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate. OpenPhone solves that instantly. Guys, your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more, who's handling this? See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnCollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. So, Kenton, two quarterback competitions have been officially declared over this week in the ACC, one of which the job goes to the more experienced competitor, and the other of which the job goes to a really talented true freshman. Let's start with the experienced one. So, Syracuse have named, and I guess we shouldn't be too surprised by this, although they had a legit competition for the first couple of weeks of camp. But Notre Dame transfer Steve Angeli was named the starter over LSU transfer Ricky Collins at Syracuse. Now, neither of which has ever been a full-time starter, but Angeli has a lot more experience. I think he's appeared in like 13 games for Notre Dame, and he has started a game for the Fighting Irish. Ricky Collins has very little experience. So, and Kenton, you also figure, who does Syracuse open against? Tennessee Volunteers. So you would figure Steve Angeli probably gives them a chance to win that game at the very least, if not perform better for the entire season.
You know, I'm not really surprised by this. We talked about the fact that Angeli was coming over to, what was it, his old OC's brother or something along those lines, or, you know, some right? Very familial connection. It was expected to be kind of a situation where he won that battle. But I do want to applaud Fran Brown for making this truly a battle. All reports out of Syracuse camp have been that this was a both getting reps with the ones, both getting an opportunity to see what they could do, as opposed to a, hey, Angeli, Steve's here now. Get to the back of the bus, Ricky. It was a situation where they both had the opportunity to win the job on their medal. Apparently, Angeli came away with it. You've got to applaud both of these gentlemen. And also, if I had to give any advice to Ricky Collins and every other quarterback who lost their quarterback battle, remember what happened with old Texas Christian University a couple years ago. The guy who won the quarterback battle got hurt in the first game, and the backup ends up taking them to a national championship. Okay. Right. So just because you lost it in the beginning does not mean that it is irredeemably lost. Does not mean that it is a guarantee.
Look at Kevin Jennings last year. Lost the job to Preston Stone. He got the job. And then they went to the college football playoff.
Well, that's the thing. Kevin Jennings should really give you hope, because that wasn't even a battle. Preston Stone was an all-conference performer the year before. There was no like, hey, Kevin Jennings is going to be a guy. There was Kevin, you're going to be a backup, hold this clipboard, call these plays, do these little wonky signals on the sideline, and that's all there is to it. And he got his opportunity to play. So the guys who lose this thing, Ricky Collins and company, be ready. Steve Angeli, what you going to do, brother? You're walking into some, whether you want to realize it or not, Kyle McCord left big shoes to fill there. One of the best seasons in not only recent Syracuse history, but in Syracuse football history. You cannot name me 10 better seasons in Syracuse football history. So, you know, you're following up that. That's got to be a tough ask, but you got to do it nonetheless.
Angeli, by the way, appeared in 21 games at Notre Dame. One start, but appeared in 21 games. So he's by far the more experienced. Now, at Cal, and there's a lot of excitement about the young man that they named their starter. He beat out Ohio State transfer Devin Brown. The job goes to true freshman Jaron Kiave Sangopulatele, who becomes the new starting quarterback at Cal. This was a blue chipper, 4-star plus recruit out of high school. And this is a fun fact, Kenton, is he's set to start that opening game, presumably be their starter all season long. He'll become the first true freshman quarterback at Cal to start the opening season game since Jared Goff back in 2013. So that's pretty good company for him. We'll see if he can have that sort of success even more so at Cal.
Oh, absolutely. You know, this is a very, very big deal here. And it's so interesting. This is why I tell people all the time, no matter what you do in the game of football, you are only a couple wins away. You're only a couple doing something right away from people forgetting, because people forget Jaron, while he is a true freshman, did not start his college career at Cal. He started off at Oregon, did bowl
Right.
prep with Oregon, and then was like, actually, I'm going. And everybody and their mama had everything terrible to say about this young man. They called him everything but a child of God. Oh, look at these players. They just take the money and run. He took their money without ever playing it down, without knowing any of the details about compensation or lack thereof. Oh, this guy, he just wants to double dip and, all this good stuff. He wants to take his money and play right away. And now look, are there any critiques now? Are there any loudmouths now spouting off about what a terrible and selfish young man he is? No, because he won a quarterback battle. And again, I simply say, older guys, or not the older guys, guy who lost the battle, be ready. Be ready. This is a true freshman. We hope he stays healthy. We hope he has a great season. We hope that he surprises everybody and saves Wilcox's job. We hope. But be ready. Be ready just in case. Because again, the quarterback battle is won right now. It is not a permanent state.
Yeah, and Sangapulitele is not only is he an exciting prospect, but I know that he's got the entire state of Hawaii behind him. So he's a left-handed Hawaiian quarterback. So he's trying to follow in the footsteps of Tua Tagovailoa, what he did at Alabama. Dylan Gabriel out of Hawaii, Marcus Mariota. Sangapulitele they're hoping that he becomes like the next member in line of great college quarterbacks to come out of Hawaii. So that the whole island, all the islands, because the whole island, there's a bunch of islands out there. All the islands are behind Sangapulitele, who's going to get his opportunity for a Cal team, Kenton, that's going to be very interesting because so much new talent that they brought in through the portal. They lost so many guys out the portal. It really does feel like a completely different team from what we saw last year. I don't know if that's going to work out better or worse in 2025, but there certainly is an infusion of young talent that's going to affect them beyond this upcoming season.
Oh, there definitely is. And the reality is, I think that this is more of a foundational season than enjoy the fruits of your labor season. This is going to be a team that is doing a lot more sowing than reaping, in my opinion, because they're very young. They're very young. They're extremely inexperienced. And not only are they young and inexperienced, everybody here feels new. You're looking at all of this newness all around. This is going to be a team that if they just keep things competitive and spicy, it's like, oh, okay. All right. You talk about true freshman quarterback. Their starting running back is very likely going to be Kendrick Raphael, who's an NC State transfer.
Yep.
He's never been a full-time starter either at the running back position. So you're looking at a lot. We talk about all their pass catchers from last year being going as well for the most part. You are seeing a situation, and especially defensively, where Wilcox is the expert. All of those leading tackling linebackers and all that, all of those guys, that entire defensive backfield, that was like a no-fly zone. Basically, all of those guys are going. They might just ask Lawrence if he's got any eligibility left at this point. So, this is – I'm talking about Lawrence Ross, by the way. We still call you out to be on the show, Lawrence. We looking for you, Lawrence. But, it is a situation where that team could be exciting. They could be a team that we look up and say, did they get 7-8 wins this year? Which to me, again, that's a very great foundational year. Anything that gets them in a bowl game is a great foundational year. I'm not sure it happens, but I think that to me is like hey, they did their big one this year type of season.
No doubt. Well, we appreciate everyone for making Locked On ACC your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out the portal. Our good friend Brian Smith does an excellent job talking all things NIL, transfer portal, and recruiting on the portal, one of the newest podcasts on the Locked On family. Make sure you check Kenton out at Locked On Wolfpack. Check me out at Locked On Canes. We'll talk to everyone next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.